I'm in the process right now of planning a road trip for myself, my wife, and my 2 kids. We're going to go travel around a big chunk of eastern and central Newfoundland in about a few weeks from now, 2 or 3 weeks from now. This is by no means my first run around the island, as you may already know if you've watched any of my videos before, but I'm not traveling solo this time, and I need to be mindful of other people that are going to be in the car to make sure they enjoy their trip as well. And as I'm planning things for this particular trip, I'm realizing like a lot of this information could be useful to you if you are considering a road trip around Newfoundland at any point in the near future. And a couple of things that have come to mind that, I just take for granted when I'm traveling solo that just need to be thought through when you're traveling with little kids or a wife who isn't a particularly big fan of long car rides, for example. So I've organized 7 points, and I'm going to start off with seasonality because we're leaving kind of like on the tail end of the conventional road trip season in Newfoundland. So a few things to be aware of doing this. If you are coming to Newfoundland specifically for something like icebergs, or whale watching, or puffins, or something like that, you need to be aware of when the peak season for these attractions happens to be. The idea of traveling around Newfoundland in the peak tourism season in the middle of summer is definitely appealing because you have the best chance for the best weather. But certain things will happen outside of this peak tourism season where you need to make some adjustments to meet your expectations. For example, icebergs, that's a spring phenomenon. You may come across icebergs in the middle of summer, but you cannot prepare for that. You can't plan for that. You get lucky. But if you want to prepare, the highest likelihood of actually seeing icebergs will be to travel in spring, for example. Seeing puffins with their brightest colors, that's something that you have a wider window than the iceberg season, but you still need to plan your trip at the tail end of June into maybe early August. After that, they start to lose their color, and that's nature. So, you have to adjust based on what you're looking for. Another thing with seasonality that you really should be aware of is that the tourism season is very, very busy. And outside of the peak tourism season, the numbers of people traveling around obviously dwindles. And there's pros and cons that come along with this. Some of the good stuff is there's just less people if you're not into crowds, and you can be in a small town like Twillingate, for example. If it's the middle of July, there's people everywhere. It's a bustling place. But if you travel in October or March or sometime outside of the main summer season, you'll find accommodations for lower prices and things like that. But on the downside, there's a lot of businesses that are strictly seasonal, and you may not be able to find a place to sit down and eat a meal. So you may not be able to find as many accommodations or as many restaurants in a lot of these sort of tourism-driven communities outside of the peak summer months. But something that I've noticed in the last decade or so, it might be longer than that, but I've noticed in the last decade, is that as nice as the weather can be in the summer, what I've been noticing is that the fall is really good. It cools down. It's not a full-on extension of summer, but you get more blue skies. Outside of hurricane season, which is a real consideration, but I digress. Outside of that, you can get some really good weather through September into October, and even into November many years. So the seasonality of traveling around Newfoundland, yes, summer is peak season for a lot of reasons, but you may want to extend your plans into the fall where there are just basically less people around, prices of things like accommodations are typically a little lower, and you can still enjoy largely good weather. I think it's really important to understand just how big Newfoundland is, and sort of even more than that, how point A to point B within Newfoundland is often a lot further than it may appear on a map. There are very few straight roads. The nature of the way that communities sprung up around Newfoundland, it's more about coastal access than road access inland. So roads were built after the fact, and the landscape of Newfoundland is very hilly and rocky and lots of bodies of water within the island itself. So roads take a windy path most of the time. I don't think you can really squeeze in as much as some people try to within like a week or 10 days or whatever, because the amount of driving between certain points of interest will be winding and take a lot longer than maybe it looks like if you're just looking at a map. So basically, just don't try to squeeze too much into a small window of time. If you have the option, take more time, spend more time on the island if your priority is really to see as much as you can and experience as much as you can. Of course, not everybody's going to be able to extend the amount of time you can spend in all these different places. So if you are pressed for time and you have 7 days and you want to maximize your enjoyment, Don't try to spread yourself too thin and cover too much ground. Pick and choose specific areas that you're interested in and try to get a more rich experience by exploring the specific areas in more detail. That's my suggestion. Now, if you're interested, maybe I could put together a video where I create a few itineraries and talk about the specific areas that I've explored and give you an idea of how you can sort of create chunks of Newfoundland if you only have a limited amount of time and you know you're going to come. I could focus, around the St. John's and Avalon area, if you fly into Gander, if you take the ferry from Port aux Basques, things like that. And then maybe that'll be helpful. So let me know in the comments if you're interested in getting some suggestions of specific itineraries based on entry points into the province itself. All right, I'll be happy to do that. Now, with the distance that you're going to travel within the island of Newfoundland, sometimes you may find that the connectivity is lacking. And this can be really important if you're traveling, if you're using maps on your phone, or if you're just listening to the radio or looking for internet to keep kids occupied while you're traveling. You need to be aware that there's going to be long stretches where connectivity just drops out completely. So whether that means downloading maps, whether that means bringing your own music, or if you're traveling with kids, making sure that you download some apps and things that don't require the internet. It's going to be really important to be aware of that before you actually hit the road. You could be headed to amazing places, but there could be an hour and a half or 2 hour stretch of driving before you reach the place with no internet or no radio, and it can be a bit of a shock if you're not prepared for it. So highly recommend it to heed this point, especially if you're traveling with kids or really anybody. But be prepared for poor signal, whether that's radio, internet, or whatever the case may be. Have a backup for your entertainment purposes. You've come across the names probably of Twillingate and Fogo Island, Grossmore National Park, St. John's. These are places that are higher profile in the sense that tourists have probably heard of them. Bonavista is another one. Fairyland is another one. These places are fantastic. The images that you see in the beautiful marketing campaigns for tourism, Newfoundland and Labrador, these are, I would say, embellishments of the reality, but they do portray the reality of these places. It's tourism, so they're showing the best side of all of these communities. But if you are watching these, if you're captivated by Newfoundland because of these highly produced, beautiful commercials that have been airing now for like 15 years, they're not fooling you. This is a piece of what Newfoundland is like, but they don't necessarily cover every base around the island. I've gone to a lot of places over the last 2 or 3 years that I've never experienced before, that I've been aware of, but I just figured I'd go check them out for myself. And I've said on this channel before, Harbour Breton has absolutely blown my mind because I had no idea that it was actually as beautiful as it is. The southwest coast, so if you take the ferry to Newfoundland from North Sydney, Nova Scotia, you land in Port aux Basques. 95% of people, I'm sure, would travel north on the Trans-Canada Highway heading towards like Stephenville and Corner Brook. If you instead turn east and take the highway in as far as Rose Blanche Harbour Lacoux, you're going to see a very unique corner of Newfoundland and Labrador. A town like Lassie, Harbour Breton, Burgeo, St. Anthony. These are towns that are definitely lower profile but are absolutely beautiful. You can take the road less traveled and visit some of these other less famous communities. Now, I know this isn't going to apply to everybody, but if I play the probabilities, I'm assuming if you're coming to Newfoundland, you're going to fly in through St. John's Airport. If you come to St. John's, you can explore the city and not leave and have a decent trip, but I strongly recommend that you get out and explore somewhere else around Newfoundland outside the capital area. For one suggestion that I think you'll enjoy, check out this video right here. It's about the Bonavista Peninsula, and if you are pressed for time in any way, but you really want to get out and try one place, experience one place outside the capital area, this is the place. I believe so. So go check that one out next. I'll see you over there. All right, see you, loves you, bye.